So I'm going to talk about a couple of things, but right here for this section, I'm going to focus on what I'm going to call the Trump paradox. The Trump paradox really tries to answer this fundamental question: is Trump becoming an authoritarian or not? All right. Now, I'll start with a troubling example and try to build from there, but we'll see. Okay, the fight over tariffs, okay, has a disturbing but loose parallel with the history of Hitler. That's right, all you loony liberals out there. I'm drawing a comparison between Trump and Hitler. Oh, look out. But I said it's loose. Okay, so what's the issue? First of all, historically, the path to complete tyranny that Hitler accomplished was paved with a series of court rulings where he would go to the German High Court and say, I need this power, please grant it to me. And the court gave in time and time again. And each time he had a little bit more authority, a little bit more authority until he was able to declare himself the final law of the land. And we know how that turned out. Okay, now in America's case, as not precedent, but before all this, we have seen knee-jerk liberal judges on the circuit courts and other federal benches fight Trump every step of the way, whether it was for illegal immigration or for any economic changes. They just wouldn't let him have his day. Okay. That said, now we could fast forward instead to, there are others I'm not going to get into, but this case of tariffs is kind of important because I think we see the issues here in pretty sharp relief. The point being that the original concept of the Constitution and division of powers called for Congress to have the power of the purse and with it the power to lay tariffs. Okay. Meantime, there is this other segment that has become controversial, hasn't really been put to the test, and has gone on for a long time now. And that is the use and the abuse of emergency powers, especially through executive orders. Okay. I should probably do a special study just on executive orders and try and sort this all out. Because, I mean, I read all these things and I'm not sure they're even true because people will misunderstand things, misread things, misrepresent things, and so it requires extra research to try and get to the bottom of it. And sometimes I'm guilty too. Just wanted to throw that in there. In this case, though, we have the Supreme Court hearing underway where Trump is asking for these powers of tariffing to be within his realm. Basically, at least one of the judges, I think it was Gorsuch, Justices Joe Gorsuch, came back and said, so you're asking us to give more power to the president. Okay. That's the part, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry, where I'm hearing that little echo from Germany in the 1930s, 1920s, I don't know. So there I expressed my concern. Now, that said, I think the other point needs to be made is that this fight over who really controls tariffs, tariff policy, is also a product of two other problems. Okay. Problem number one is that we're learning that tariffs are actually can be beneficial. They're not destructive. So there's a whole relearning process that we have to go through that. We have to unlearn some stuff. And then the second thing is that that with the reluctance, should I say, dare I say, inability of Congress to tackle this tough subject, has just been one of many, quote, abuses of federal authority that have led to the situation in which we find ourselves. Dare I mention the federal debt or deficit? sorry, 30, was it now $37 trillion? This, anybody can look at this and say this is out of control. The fact that other countries are racing to the bottom as far as debt is concerned is irrelevant. America needs to get its act together, and it's a combination of things that have brought us to this point. So, with respect to the Supreme Court hearing, it to me will be rather uncomfortable. All right, if we find that the Supreme Court uh, ends up landing on Trump's side in this matter, because to me, that's going to be a historical parallel going back to Nazi Germany. However, the U.S. Supreme Court does have a nasty habit. That nasty habit is to issue da 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 narrow rulings, and I mean narrow. Okay, this is the legal principle we wish to establish here. However, the constraints on this legal principle end right there, right there, no wider. Okay, I'm sorry. In my book, when you do stuff like that, maybe this is okay. I'm not a lawyer, okay, but when you're trying to create what really looks like a form of an exception, that in and of itself is a bad precedent. However, it wouldn't be the first time that the Supreme Court has done this. In this case, of course, we know that there are these serious implications. What is it now? $90 billion collected so far? I mean, the idea of repatriating those $90 billion back to those countries that would have paid the tariffs or the companies is problematic to say the least. Not only does it bring us back to a bad position financially in this nation, but you add to it the cost of the actual repatriation, which makes it even worse. Now, I think the Supreme Court understands this, but it's a narrow ruling was only the only way really out of this problem for now. And I mean, if you make it temporary, or if you say you could do these but no more, all bad ideas. But on the other hand, what this means is they are trying to keep intact the constitutional standard for who's in control of setting tariffs, Congress. Anyway, I mean, so all of this said, let me just do another quick historical review. The creation of the federal bureaucracy was a Faustian bargain by Congress back in the Woodrow Wilson administration. Okay, it was Woodrow Wilson who believed firmly in the importance of having a strong professional administrative state. And Congress kind of bought into it, and what it required is that the rulemaking authority that needed to be embedded in such a bureaucracy had to be drawn from the legislative branch. Okay, so now we're talking about the constitutional authority originally envisioned for the legislature being embodied in part in this other group called the federal bureaucracy. I don't know. They went for it, and I think we see the consequences. We have an administrative deep state that has long been out of control. Okay, so the beginnings for that were seeded in the Woodrow Wilson administration. It seemed like a good idea at the time, and but because I'm going to say it, you violated those constitutional principles. This is where we are. So I want to believe that the folks in the Supreme Court are also thinking to themselves, well, if we start violating another constitutional principle, this too is going to end badly. So they're going to have, yeah, so we'll see how this goes. My bet is that it will be a limited ruling. It will be maybe a temporary ruling. And hopefully we can move forward from there. I'm kind of in the camp where these tariffs are proving to be beneficial. They're an effective weapon. It's the kind of thing where we need to, how should I say this, establish more robust relationships. How does that sound? More robust relationships with other nations, especially communist China. So those are my thoughts on the Trump paradox for today. And I'm sure as I do some more research, I'll find some other paradoxes too. So on that happy note, see you guys later.